Okay, let's talk about one of the most incredible stories in world history, the Meiji Restoration. This is a period where Japan basically hit the fast forward button on its own history and completely reinvented itself in just a few decades.
And that's really the big question here, right? How does a country that's all about ancient warrior traditions and samurai swords suddenly transform into a world of industrial factories and steam trains, all within a single person's lifetime? That's the epic journey we're about to explore. So, to really get a grip on how huge this change was, you have to picture what Japan was like before it all happened. For more than 200 years, it was a nation that was basically closed off from the rest of the world, run by a powerful military government. Now, who is actually running the show? Well, it wasn't the emperor. It was a military leader called the shogun. You can think of him as the country's top general, the guy with all the real power. The same family, the Tokugawa, held this position for centuries. So you had this really interesting power split. Japan did have an emperor, but he was more of a symbolic, almost religious figure, living in the old capital of Kyoto. The shogun, on the other hand, held all the actual political and military power. He was the one running the country day to day. But this whole system was starting to crack. The economy was having problems, and some of the powerful local lords, especially down in the south of Japan, were getting pretty restless. They saw how strong Western nations were becoming and started to believe that the only way for Japan to be strong again was to give power back to the emperor. And all of that pressure builds up. And then comes 1868. This is the year, the one that kicks off a brand new era for Japan, with the emperor finally taking center stage again. So here's the pivotal moment. A young emperor, his name was Meiji, officially takes back control of the country. And just like that, more than 2 centuries of military rule by the shoguns were over. This is the official start of what we call the Meiji Restoration. And one of the very first things the new government did was a huge symbolic move. The emperor leaves the traditional capital, Kyoto, and travels to the city of Edo, which was the shogun's old headquarters. They then rename Edo to Tokyo, which literally means Eastern Capital, and bam, it becomes the new heart of government and power. This was a clear signal that the old ways were done for good. Okay, so if you're going to build a modern country from the ground up, first you have to clear away the old stuff. And for Japan, that meant completely taking apart the feudal system that had defined the country for hundreds of years. See, for centuries, Japan was split up into all these different territories, kind of like little kingdoms, each run by a powerful lord called a daimyo. The new Meiji government very cleverly convinced these daimyos to hand over their lands and their power to the central government. For the first time, the country was truly united under one single rule. And this leads us to what is maybe one of the most dramatic changes of all. We're talking about the end of the samurai. The iconic warrior class that had defined Japan for centuries was about to find out that the world had moved on. Just imagine. The new government strips away everything that made a samurai, well, a samurai. They lost their special status. They weren't even allowed to carry their 2 swords in public anymore. And then the government stopped paying them. This wasn't just a policy change. It was a total shock to their entire identity and way of life. And this really shows you where things were headed. By getting rid of the samurai as a special warrior class, the government could bring in a new law called conscription. So what does that mean? It means all young men, no matter their background, now had to serve in the military. This created a brand new national army, loyal to the emperor and the country, not to some local lord. All right, so with the old system out of the way, Japan could finally get to work building the new one. And this kicked off an unbelievable period of learning and construction, as the nation basically went into overdrive to catch up with the West. A huge part of this was something called the Iwakura Mission. I mean, think about this. Japan's top leaders go on this massive world tour. They head to the United States and all over Europe, and their mission was simple. Learn everything. Study their factories, their governments, their schools, and bring all the best ideas back home to build a stronger Japan. And they did not waste any time putting those ideas to work. By 1872, you've got the first railway line. Suddenly, travel times just shrink. Then telegraph lines start popping up all over, connecting the country with instant communication. A modern postal service gets set up. All of these things literally wired the nation together in a way that was impossible just a few years before. The new leaders were smart. They knew a modern country needs educated citizens.
So also in 1872, they created a national school system. And this was a game changer. Education was now mandatory for all children, boys and girls. As you can imagine, literacy rates just went through the roof.
The government also started pouring money into building new industries from scratch. We're talking silk mills, coal mines, massive steel production, shipbuilding. They even set up a modern banking system. This was the start of Japan's journey from a nation of farmers to a true industrial powerhouse.
So you can imagine, with all these huge, sweeping changes happening, what was it like for the average person? Well, their entire world was changing. Their jobs, what they wore, even how they saw themselves and their country. And the difference was just stark. You'd walk through a city and see traditional Japanese robes right next to Western-style suits. Old wooden buildings were being replaced by new ones made of brick and stone. People started to think of themselves not just as being from their local province, but as citizens of the nation of Japan. And to make it all official, to really lock in this new identity, Japan adopted its first modern constitution in 1889. This created a parliament, called the Diet, and set up a whole legal framework for the government based on what they'd seen in the West. It was a huge step toward being recognized as a modern nation. So, after all of that, this whirlwind of change, what was the result? Well, the impact was, and I'm not exaggerating here, absolutely astonishing. Think about it like this. In less than 50 years, less than a single lifetime, Japan went from being a closed-off feudal society to a major industrial and military power on the world stage. They were now ready to compete with the most powerful nations on Earth. But this incredible story leaves us with one last, really important question to think about. When a society changes that much, that fast, what is gained? And what might be lost along the way? What is the true price of such rapid progress?